The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Is it mad that the world burning is not in our, top 3 concerns? You thought bad news was done, but I'm back with more. In Alice Snedden's Bad News Saves the World, I finally address the climate crisis and explore why no one cares. Watch it on thespinoff.co.nz.
I can see the anxiety starting to emit from you.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by Spark Lab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about Spark Lab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spin-off with help from Callaghan Innovation. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
On the first week of the job at Coca Cola in 1996, today's guest was wheeling out Coke products from Pizza Hut after they had moved to Pepsi. Although just a new sales rep, he vowed that one day he'd get Coke back into the big chain and its sister KFC. The years passed, and Craig Cotton moved up the ranks. He went from sales rep to a manager, into sales operations marketing, and all the way to the general manager from his shop floor start. And on his last day with the company, 17 years later, Craig and his team made that deal with Restaurant Brands, the biggest single deal in Coke New Zealand's history. How's that for a story of growth and dedication? Craig has gone on to be CEO for the Better Drinks Co., the makers of Charlie's, as it went from a small indeed a part of the huge Asahi network, and then on to Independent Liquor, and now the Innovation Council, where this year's awards are upcoming and the sector is in good health. To talk the career and what could be next for innovation, Craig Cotton joins us now. G'day.
Morning.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on.
Ah.
And so 20 years in fast-moving consumer goods. What got you into the world of drinks and treats?
Well, it started just straight after university and the opportunity to, go and network and put myself out there with a number of different companies. And Coca Cola was one that just New Zealand, or back then known as Coca Cola Amatil, was just really appealing and sort of started on that journey.
And Coke would have been, there are a lot of brands these days, but it would have been the very biggest, the only thing in lots of dairies, yeah?
Yeah, it was. It was a pretty dominant player back then, but still, on a path of actually quite significant growth, which really surprised me when I sort of got in and actually started to understand how the dynamics of a large company like that can actually still grow at a significant pace.
That's interesting, and that's kind of growing the market, isn't it? Because if you think about the number of fridges with soft drinks in them, they've hugely increased everywhere.
Yeah, they have. And again, that's just that whole sort of, game of understanding what your market really is and who are those customers that have the potential, to expand that base irrespective of what industry you're really in.
What does it take you've had a few different roles there across those companies. What does it take to move from sales and starting, right at the coalface and into management and into new areas in a company like that?
Yeah, I guess from a young age, I got some advice from a mentor saying, always just try and put yourself in that person's shoes that's, ahead of you and understand what it is that they're really after, because ultimately it's all about how do you connect. And I guess I've always been very focused on collaboration to help people be successful. And that's not just people I work with, but obviously my customers and people that I just, genuinely meet when I was out and about. So that was probably the philosophy I put in place, but also to understand quite quickly, what is your brand? What do you actually stand for, and what provides you that opportunity to be something that other people go, geez, what's that individual up to and why? And that's probably the key question, is understanding, why you do what you do. If you're clear on that, then I think you will typically always be reasonably successful.
That's interesting. How did you work that out? Was that, did you decide, first up, what did you decide your brand would be? And then how did you go about making that something that worked?
Yeah, well, in the early stages, I just really wanted to be someone that probably challenged some of the opportunities that existed. I took over Wellington City, and it was a pretty full-on, intense sort of place. Traffic's a bit of a nightmare. And I just decided, when I looked at my actual market and my customers understood what it was that they wanted, I thought, I'll start early. So I'd start at 4:30 sort of most mornings, because my cafes and a lot of the bakeries and that were actually open at that stage. So I was able to complete most of my, I guess what you call a route, quite quickly. And then that enabled me to have the opportunity to really scope out further opportunities and grow that particular market. And when I actually left that route a sort of year and a half later, 2 people went into the city within Wellington. So it's just understanding, what it is that you think you can sort of, I guess, cut through and create a bit of a point of difference. And that's like with any brand, really. Treat yourself like a brand, and treat people, in terms of understanding what really does make them tick, and how you can obviously help them maybe tick a little bit faster.
So I haven't heard people talk about that in terms of the way that they personally present. But I work in brand, and one of my favorite things is the idea that your brand is what you do. And so if you want to be interesting, you have to do a whole lot of interesting things. So that's interesting. What were you trying to define your brand as? Was it like going further or being most reliable, and then so you just go the furthest and be the most reliable?
Yeah, and it is, to be honest, it's that simple. Again, a teacher at Palmerston Boys High School, Mr. Tamatea, he set really early that, your attitude, not aptitude, determines your altitude in life. And that really stuck with me. And that sort of, and my grandmother used to always say too, it costs you nothing to say hello to somebody. And she had another way of putting it too, which really was, I later sort of grew on that and said, again, your attitude is really infectious. So it comes about, what do you want people around you to catch? So that was something that I guess probably defined me as probably my core brand, is that every day, and again, people say, you can choose your attitude. It's so true. And if I can help other people have that same philosophy, then I find that everyone always tends to move forward, and every day, just be that little bit better.
People outside of marketing and brand often see a word like brand as being a bit wishy-washy or something, or just a lot of talk. But as you're kind of, saying there, it really is about actually delivering and coming through on that. Like, how do you do that for a team? How do you help people kind of get into that space?
Well, yeah, to me, everything starts with culture. And again, I've been really fortunate to meet some pretty amazing leaders. The likes of Mike Bennett from Z, just outstanding. Guy called Michael Henderson, who has got a company called Cultures at Work, and he's a corporate anthropologist, studies cultures, but from a corporate environment. And again, it does start, honestly, it starts with culture. You've got to understand, what is actually existing in the organisation, or even from a customer perspective, what's that culture that's existing within those customers. And so many people try and define that by doing workshops and, almost, trying to define what they feel the culture is. Yeah. The best way to do is just observe, don't talk, listen, observe, talk to people, ask lots of why questions, and understand, because your culture's there, your values are there, and it's just uncovering what they are. And you've got to do that by listening and observing. And that was something else, my grandfather sort of said to me at early age, you do have, basically 2 ears and 1 mouth for a particular reason. And again, it is just so true. You've got to listen, you've got to observe.
You would have sat in a fair few of those brand workshops where everyone gets their Post-its out and decide, what the attributes of the brand. And if you're in New Zealand, every single place you go to are going to say some of the same things. We're easygoing, we've got a sense of humour, we look after our mates, we like jandals. You're like, oh, geez, what? But you've actually got to find out what's special to a place. Yeah. Let's have a look at one of the ways that you kind of help change your culture. So after Coca Cola, you went into what had been Charlie's, the really cool kind of energetic soft drink company, and it was going through a big series of change, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you're taking, Stefan and Mark and Simon did a phenomenal job, and it was great to be able to step into Stefan's shoes, but have Stefan still, as part of the team from a directorship point of perspective. And
so he'd been the founding CEO.
Yeah, founding CEO. So sort of come in and then take over. After sort of that period of roughly sort of 14 years, it was like everyone was going, well, why you? What are you going to add? Why have you chosen to come from a big multinational to, our small little business, which is very, very different. And we're one of those companies that have always competed quite, vigorously against the bigger guys.
A small little independent that would have been fighting you as Coke, as the big bad guy in
when I first started
in drinks cabinet.
When I first started in Wellington, Stefan's orange juice, he was like a little mosquito, and he would just be, you think you'd bat him away, and the next thing you turn up in one of your fridges again. And I never thought that I'd actually work, with Stefan, let alone, sort of be in a company that was suddenly I was the mosquito.
Because of course the Coca Cola Kerry orange juice is a huge product. So Stefan's would have been going directly against you there. And then as they moved into all the other sodas, they would have been against. But then they got sold into Asahi, didn't they? So they had to.
Yeah, Stefan's went to Frucor, and then Charlie's got sold onto Asahi.
Yeah, to learn how to be part of a big operation. So how did you take an independent company like that and help it grow in that new environment? Yeah,
so I was trying to really understand again, what the culture was, and more importantly, what did the culture need to be. And one thing I settled on really quickly was this, I guess, idea of a teenager, and the fact that, this team many of them had grown up with Stefan and grown up with Mark and Simon. And there was obviously a few people that had come in the last sort of couple of years as well as they went through that change. And it was just like, if you can harness and understand a story and then get people to galvanise around that. So I did it in two ways. One was, we've got this amazing opportunity to take this young teenager into adulthood. And you don't get many opportunities to do that. So that sort of galvanised that, hey, maybe we might be onto something. The other thing is health and safety. I'm very, very passionate about health and safety. And not that we didn't have a safe environment with Charlie's, but every company can always be better. And when you actually start to talk health and safety and you live it and you breathe it, all of a sudden people go, wow, this person actually genuinely really cares about us, which you should. So from that perspective, it was just about, again, listening to people. It was observing them, talking to them, understanding the different connections you could start to make. How do we collaborate better? From that collaboration, how can we take some of the, I guess, ideas that we've got, but turn that into content that not only made sense for us as a team, but really made sense for our customers. So, and that then comes back to what's our capability currently. So what did we need? What do we need to change? What were those other, I guess, dynamic blocks we needed to bring together? And then once you've got that capability sort of right, first and foremost, obviously culture. You've got to have your culture right. There's no point having strategy without having the culture, because you'll never actually, it'll be completely worthless. So from that perspective, then it's just like, then how do we change that engagement with our customers? And then what are the opportunities, again, of listening, observing with our customers? So it's the same idea from whether you're with your own people or with your customers, or with people that have got nothing to do with your business, but hey, one day they might.
I guess there would be a lot of risk there, though. So if you've been a company that's all about being the independent and has a bit of a kind of larrikin, good-natured larrikin spirit of the founders, and then they lose maybe that element of the story and having to find a new story for people to get behind and for people to believe, because the fastest thing to get found out in the world is bullshit. What kind of story did you land on to take that independent spirit and then grow it?
Yeah, well, Charlie's had always been a challenger brand, and they'd always, they'd established really the first sort of premium category within FMCG with taking juice to freshly squeezed. And with that, they'd always been a challenger, but typically a bit of a challenger, maybe in some sense a bit of a pain in the ass. And so that challenger spirit was a foundation. Family was an absolute foundation, which was pretty cool, because the great thing about families is you have stories, you have sayings, you have beliefs, and that you can be part of something that, you will have some challenges, you'll have some knockbacks, but ultimately at the end of the day, you pick each other up, and you have to, because you're family. So that was a really cool foundation to have to build off of, from what Stefan and Mark and Simon had left. And then it was like, well, what is it that we really do need to move forward? And so we did again, observing, working with a team. I got, Michael Henderson involved, and really quickly we started to uncover that ultimately that challenger spirit was there. But it was always that challenge to actually take it to been better. And we sort of uncovered sort of 3 core, what we termed, one of the team actually termed vitamin C's, which again had a great connection, was around that we were always very committed to each other. Again, great family sort of, underpinning. We were very creative. So from that aspect, and again, that was sort of the essence of what Charlie's had always been. But ultimately it was around commercial outcomes, both for us as a team, but also obviously for our family, our parent, which was Asahi. And one of the adages we came up quite quickly is we didn't want to be one of those teenagers that was always going to our parents for money. Asahi had already, spent a lot on actually acquiring them. So it was like, time now to say, how can we actually make our own money and again, take that teenager on that next phase of growth, which made sense.
That family analogy, that's something that's a bit of a topic of conversation at the moment in business. With the Netflix approach to culture, which is that sports team approach, where if you're not performing, you're off the field, as opposed to that family approach where even if your cousin's a dick, you can't kick him out of the family. And that's become more popular these days, the kind of sports analogy versus the family one. What do you make of that?
I think at the end of the day, it is a balance. At the end of the commercial outcomes are critical, right? Because if you don't have commercial outcomes, you can't have a strong foundation, and then the actual culture will start to be under a bit more pressure. So for me, it's family is important from the fact that to me, it's never been about a work-life balance. It's life. So you've got to, everything you do has got to build a foundation to enable you and your family and ultimately the people that you work with to have a better life, really. And that adage came true. Recently I've been on a journey sort of last 14, 16 months where, my family, I get to see them every couple of weekends. My children, I've got an amazing 12-year-old and 9-year-old boy. And Briar said to me, Dad, and it was a pretty emotional conversation, to be honest, because I've been out of Auckland, I've been travelling lots, I've been working and living where I've been working. And she just said to me, Dad, unfortunately, Dad, I want something to, I've got to talk to you about. This lifestyle that you're currently living is just not good. We want to see, you more. We don't want to just catch up every other weekend when it's our official time to see you. We want to come and stay with you more often. And I said, well, what's changed? And she said, well, in previous sort of, I guess, again, she used the word life, is that we felt really part of it. We knew your team, we knew your brands, we'd come to work, we understood, what you actually did. We even got to meet, your customers, etc. And so what she was explaining to me is that it was just, what we did was just part of our life, right? And she felt engaged and part of it. Obviously, I've been out of Auckland, so it was a bit of an emotional moment, to be honest. And when I asked her, why haven't you spoken about this before? She said, well, Dad, you're so passionate about what you do, I honestly didn't think you'd listen. So it was a tough pill to take, but it was great that she had that confidence to have that conversation with me. And that's part of, I think, putting yourself out there that enables people to have those conversations with you, to talk about where things are at. And to me, it is about treating people just being real and being authentic. But there are times when people get to the stage where it no longer makes sense to be part of the culture you've actually got, because they want to go on and maybe do something different, or they've had a life change, or a new focus for them in terms of what it is that they want to that breeds success, or what they determine success.
That idea of a family gets on really well kind of goes to the commercial point where you think families generally have a better time if they're not, say, fighting about money. So if you've got the commercials working, things are good. Let's look at the growth that you actually achieved by being part of Asahi with the Better Drinks Co., which is what Charlie became. The product launches, there was a product launch that you guys did that I saw that sold 100,000 units on its first day. I mean, that's an enormous scale. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that was our entry into the actual Japanese market, and that was the first time in Asahi's history they'd ever taken, because they obviously own a lot of companies around the world, actually taken a brand that they owned and brought it into the Japanese market. And really the team did a phenomenal job with that, and sort of the New Zealand story was just starting out, and Rebecca came to us and talked about what the New Zealand story, which is all about open minds, open hearts, open spaces. And it actually was it was just a coincidence, but we're almost on that same journey in terms of it was about how do we win the minds and the hearts of the Japanese team in Tokyo, because they certainly had those connections. So it was about how do we understand that we get their mindset to say, hey, let's take a punt on bringing this brand from New Zealand called Charlie's and bringing it into the market in Tokyo, and with one of the biggest customers, which was 7-Eleven. So it was a great journey in terms of the guys did a great job of winning those hearts and minds, really telling our story really, really well, that actually sort of added that opportunity to say, and again, it was the first time they'd launched a premium juice brand in Japan as well under the Asahi sort of family. So it was a great journey. The team did a phenomenal job. But again, it came back to understanding what was the opportunity, how do you connect with that, understanding their local capability, how can we utilise our brand to improve their position with their customers and obviously drive a good commercial outcome.
What does it take to work with a big Japanese company? Is that different than working with, a huge networked Coca Cola kind of company?
Yeah, in some ways very different. They take a different view of time. It's not that quarter to quarter to quarter sort of results. Results are still extremely important, especially when they pay the money they've paid for you. But again, if you can get them to buy into your story, and actually the Japanese, very similar to our Māori culture in terms of storytelling, is the way that they've actually passed on, intergenerational, beliefs and culture. So they really brought into our story. They really brought into this fact of, taking this young teenager on a journey into adulthood. And that enabled us to really get that emotional connection with them, which enabled them to really support us. And again, take us into that massive market, which was Tokyo.
And did it take longer? Was it harder? I ask as someone who's taken a couple of trips to Japan to try and get things kicking off, and I'm not really any wiser than I was before both of them.
Yeah, it does, because again, it's just part of that culture. It's about building those relationships, building that trust, building the understanding, and again, authenticity, being really, really clear that, hey, this person means the right thing by us as a I guess a father figure relationship, but also in terms of what we're trying to do with their brands, but also what we're going to try and do by taking our brand and putting it into their business in Japan.
And what led you to innovation? So you're now looking after the Innovation Council for a stint. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, that's again just part of this journey I'm at the moment. Is I've always been focused on how do you help people, connect, collaborate, and create new. And the opportunity came up through KPMG, and they again sort of on this journey at the moment. And they said, "Would you be interested to come and do some work for us?" And that's what I'm doing. I'm just having it's a pretty amazing story. Andy and Louise, built this business from absolutely nothing into New Zealand's largest awards business, focusing on innovation. And like with all businesses, it's that opportunity now to go, well, how can we take it from where it is now and mean more potentially to this ecosystem? And it's a big ecosystem, the whole, everything from, startups to, SMEs and medium and large, a lot of consultants out there, a lot of government departments all playing in the space, incubators, local economic development boards, etc. There's a lot happening. So it's almost like, to me, I'm looking at going, well, the awards do deliver some incredible content. Can we do a better job in actually telling and capturing the why and the how so we can share those stories? Absolutely. And then how do you share that content to actually help people connect to greater capability, which will enable them, again, to hopefully collaborate better and really collaborate. These are my marbles. I'm happy to share them because we are too small not to. Auckland population is the size of a large multinational organisation globally. So we should be focused on how we actually collaborate better together. And out of that collaboration, you're going to create the opportunity to ultimately deliver on more customers through better capability, which delivers commercial outcomes, which again, we can then feed in and create and celebrate the successes, but also the failures as well at the awards. So that's sort of the journey I'm on at the moment to understand is how can we really bring that to life with the ecosystem that's out there and just try and help connect some of those dots.
So what does that mean in practice? Kind of telling more of those stories about what innovation means and what its successes are and getting those people working together.
Absolutely, and identifying what capability they need so that you can connect. And we have some amazing partners, around the Innovation Council, and some partners have been around with us, been with us for a long time, like Bayer, etc., and 3M, and those companies, they've invested long term with us. They're on a journey, and it's like, well, how do we start to give back and enable them to actually help some of these companies that certainly require capability, whether it's people, whether it's connections to more customers, whether it's capital. How do we help, facilitate that and just connect people so that they can collaborate?
Because I suppose people only see the awards gala and, they see Te Radar up at the top doing a speech, and you see the same people in the same companies and the finalists and winning things, and people wear the same suits to all the ones. But there's a few of the different award ceremonies, but they have different I suppose, parts underneath them that you can
Just part of their culture.
build. Yeah,
totally. And that's the I think unique thing about the awards, and the team have done a great job. Jane, who looks after our marketing side of the business and the event itself, has really stepped it up again this year. Fiona, in terms of how she's taking the content, communicating that, and building again around the People's Choice Awards, etc., is again just every year they seem to do things slightly better, which is fantastic. And this year the awards, it's going to be an amazing event. Over 700 people coming along, 22 different categories plus the People's Choice Award. It's going to be a great evening on the 19th of October.
and the People's Choice Award is on at the moment, isn't it? And that's something you can just rock on up to the website and have a look through some of the finalists.
Absolutely. So, you can go to, NZ Innovation Council, go to our website, People's Choice, and, on there you can just see some of the amazing companies. And, this year we had just over 300 unique companies enter that hadn't entered before. And I was lucky enough to start just before the evaluation sort of wrap up. And it was amazing being in a room with the evaluators who came from incredible backgrounds, incredible people, incredible companies, evaluating these amazing New Zealand businesses that are absolutely doing some incredible things.
That's so cool. Thank you so much, Craig Cotton, for coming and chatting to us about the Innovation Awards and your career. Thank you very much to Jose Barbosa for producing. Thanks to Callaghan Innovation for sponsoring this podcast about new perspectives on business. And thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound. And brought to you by The Spin-Off and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/getadvice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.